안녕 everyone. Today we are going over attributes of each parent function. At the end of this lesson, you will be confident to find each attribute from different graphs. Let's start. The first parent function is f of x equals c, or sometimes we're using k as a constant. So, what is the example of constant graph? Such like y equal 4 or y equal 2. So, this graph in here, it passed through 2 on y-axis. So that's f of x equal 2. As you can see, when you have a constant function, you will have a horizontal linear graph. And you can tell there is no x-intercept. Y-intercept will be always the number that constant of that function. Line of symmetry is x equals 0 because it's symmetrical over the y-axis. Domain, since the graph is extended both sides, it's gonna be all real number. So all set of x such that x is an element of real number. And range is only gonna have as that c, the constant, it passed through, right? So it will be y such that y equal c. So c can be any number that you give into. And asymptote, so asymptote, you might not familiar with the term asymptote, and you're gonna see it, the example which graphs has an asymptote. Asymptote is the one, it's like invisible lines. The graph is reached to like kind of infinity, but never across, never passing. So I will show the example later on. On constant function graph, we don't see any asymptote. Next, linear function. Linear function you're familiar with, right? So x-intercept in this case is always gonna be 0, 0. Y-intercept is the same because it passed through the origin, right? The line of symmetry is y equal negative x. All right, so it will be y equal negative x. What about domain? Domain also stretched on both sides, so it's all real number. And range also stretch up and down, so y also all real number. Asymptote, none. Next, absolute value function. So absolute value function x-intercept is right here, same as the linear function. The origin y-intercept is the same. The line of symmetry is x equal 0 because it is similar to that constant function, right? So it's gonna be symmetrical across the y-axis. And domain, as you see, it stretches on left to and right, so all real number. So x such that all real number. What about then range? Can you tell this graph never go down below that green line, which is the x-axis, right? So that means that y has to be always the positive number. So y such that y is greater or equal to 0. And there is no asymptote. The quadratic parent function, which is f of x equal x squared. So this type of graph is called parabola, right? So x-intercept and y-intercept, same that we've been seeing other graph. It is going through the origin, so it will be 0, 0. And line of symmetry. Line of symmetry, now you can tell it's gonna be y-axis, which means x equal 0. And domain, since this graph stretches out left and right, all x is real numbers. And range, same with the absolute function, right? It's gonna be never go below the y equals 0, right? So it's gonna be y such that y is greater or equal to 0. Asymptote, we haven't seen asymptote yet. Next, square root function, f of x equals square root x. The intercepts, as you see, both are the origin, so 0, 0. And do you see any symmetric going on that graph? No, right? So there is no line of symmetry. And domain, you see this graph starts from that 0, 0 and only grows to the right side, right? So that means that all set of x such that x has to be greater or equal to 0, which means it's gonna be growing to positive infinity, right? And range, y as same thing. The y is never go below that 0, 0. So y such that greater than or equal to 0. What about the asymptote? Not yet, guys. We're gonna meet asymptote soon. Next, cubic function. You can tell x-intercept, y-intercept, same as the origin, 0, 0. And line of symmetry. There is no symmetry you can find. There's a known domain. It's growing to both sides. That means x is such that all elements of real number, and range is the same. It's growing up and down. Y is such that element of all real number. Asymptote, none. Alright, next parent function is inverse rational function. So we can also call inverse as what we've been talking about when we go over property of a real number, right? It's called reciprocal. Reciprocal, which means you're gonna flip the x, right? Flip the whatever you have as a function, right? So that inverse rational function has no x-intercept and y-intercept. So these two graphs never gonna cross x-axis or y-axis. All right, so that is we call asymptote. If you draw the invisible line all the way, like infinity, both x-axis and y-axis, that red graphs, they're gonna grow infinity but never gonna touch that green invisible line. So that is what we call asymptote. And now we can tell the asymptote first. So it will be x equals 0, that's y-axis, and then also and y equals 0, which is x-axis. And line of symmetry. So this is interesting graph. It has more than one line of symmetry. Look, let's draw the line this way, which is y equal x. So if you're folding with a y equal x, you're gonna have a matching graph. So it will be y equal x, and there is another one. Can't you see it? Oops, let me just draw with this. It's not perfect straight, but if you folding with y equal negative x, you're gonna still have a matching graphs. So let's move on to domain. So these graphs will extend it to both sides, right? So as you see this part, this is gonna be grow to negative infinity, and this will be grow to positive infinity. However, they never gonna pass through which area? That point, because there is asymptote, right? So we can write in the domain all set of x such that x is element of all real number, but x is not 0. X cannot be 0. Then you can think about the range. It would be the same way, right? The range, it grows to the positive infinity and it grows to the negative infinity. However, it's never gonna pass through that 0, right? So that being said, y such that y is all real number, but y is not 0. Good job, guys. We're almost done. Logarithmic function f of x equal ln x. So ln means natural logarithm. The x-intercept is right here. As you can see, that is when x is 1, y is 0. What about y-intercept? It looks like it passed through the y-axis, but it's never gonna pass through y-axis. Why? Because that's the asymptote. So asymptote is x equals 0. And line of symmetry, we cannot find it. And domain, as you see, it's gonna be only grow to right side, and it's never gonna pass through the what? The 0, right? So we can also writing this all set of x such that x is greater than 0. Don't include the equal sign because the graph never gonna pass through x equals 0, right? Y for y. Range, it's gonna be growing also to positive infinity to negative infinity. So y is all real number. All right, guys, good job. I'm sure you check all your work and writing down all the notes that you need, because this basic will go last throughout the whole semester you're gonna use. All right? Have a great day. I'll see you later. 안녕. Wait a minute, guys. I think we forgot one more. I'm sorry. All right, let's do quick. Exponential function is f of x equal e of x power. So you have a variable as an exponent. That's an exponential function, right? So x-intercept, this graph never passed through what? X-axis. So that means x-intercept is unknown. And y-intercept is right here, which x is 0, y is 1. Line of symmetry? None. What about domain? Domain is growing to both negative infinity to positive infinity. So that means x is a real number. Range. You see, it never crossed the x-axis. That means y is greater than 0. All right, only the positive, not even include 0. Why? Because we have an asymptote at y equals 0. Now it's really, see you later. 안녕.